The product at the moment is, effectively a health coach with this persona, Lila, which provides like guidance and can gives like all these actionable targets for a week. So it says, here's how many steps you can take, here's how many calories you should aim for, but also helps deal with symptom management. And mostly the crux of it is serving as this kind of companion for these people. So a lot of people didn't even necessarily need, hey, this is specifically what I want to do every day. But what they want is this kind of persona that grows with them and understands them. Orq kind of itself is another living, breathing part of the whole app. I mean, if you can imagine, like the way we think about it is we have the front end, which is all built in React Native, and then we have our back end, which is in Node.js, and then we have a database, but then Orq is like kind of this other component that lives on top of it. And so in terms of the development cycle, the nice thing is we don't have to change things often on Orq unless it's something, for example, like the prompt itself, in which case the nice thing is it doesn't affect us having to change our backend at all. Whereas if we were just using, OpenAI API, that would require deploying a new backend. So in that way, it kind of lives a bit separate. With the deployments, like we have a deployment for all that kind of main features, which we have. So there's the chat, there are notifications which are generated, there's the plans which are generated for the week, reading messages to determine if it's a feature request, and given an image of food breaking down the macronutrients. So quite a few pieces like this. And then for each of those, the structure we generally have is just two variants, a main and a dev, which ideally are the same, but mostly just so that we can experiment on our own without messing up the production one. And then we'll just manually copy over the changes to main. So those are the big pieces. And then the template variables, also a big component. I think most of them we have, at least for like the chats, this whole persona of the trainer, which is passed in from the back end. We use those in quite a few places. The tool calls as well in a few spots. The fallbacks, that's another thing we've been using more recently. And then, as well, probably the newest thing is this, structured outputs. That has made probably the biggest difference for us. In almost everything, we're expecting a specific output, and so just to be able to have that guarantee makes it so much easier. So we're starting to be able to have this way of viewing how all of the prompts are structured and how they come together that is managed almost entirely on Orq and not on our own system. And so if I zoom out for a second and imagine how, if today we stopped using Orq, how we would have to rebuild it all, it's like we need a whole system on our own backend for constructing this like giant string of all of the prompts and where we would store the variables and what the output is supposed to be. And in some ways, it's also quite a bit more complicated, because then if we want to show Sebastian or Henry, who they don't ever touch the code, if we want to show them how the prompt works, or they want to change it, or we want to see the logs, like we can now make our own logs and everything. So the structure of it is a big one. And then the importance of the continued development of it, right? So if you're just working with the OpenAI API, right? Like you have to, in your code, if you don't build anything else, you have to manage all of the parameters that are in there. So how many tokens you want, the temperature, you need to manage creating all of the messages, and then you need to have the prompt in plain text, right? And so now you have to start to build all this structure around that to make it make sense, and then you have to maintain that as well. So let's say then, okay, we want to be able to store the prompt somewhere else. Now we need to go put it in our CMS and then make that collaborative, and then that's version, and we'll have to pull that in. And but now those two things are disconnected, right? We don't have any way to, they're not stuck together in any way. So then you have to try to build something to make that make sense. And I think before we started using Orq, I even spent maybe 3 weeks building the system that was like keeping track of all of our calls to OpenAI and how long they took. It was like, that was already kind of a nightmare too. And then it's like, okay, someone's already done this. The general ease of use of using other models is also quite nice. For example, we use the Azure OpenAI as a fallback. And the fact that I have no clue how the Azure OpenAI API works, I don't even want to know. And that's the nice thing. It's like, now we don't have, I don't have to. At the end of the day, our job isn't to like build tooling around how to call these LLM APIs, right? It's to use it as a tool to build the solution we want to build. And so that's probably the biggest thing that Orq enables there.